Breaking tonight, as we reported at the top of the show, the citizens of San Francisco have apparently voted to recall District Attorney Chesa Boudin. The former public defender and son of left-wing activists could not beat back a campaign by opponents who accused him of being ideologically inflexible and inexperienced. And the ouster, well, could be a bad omen for progressive prosecutors in other crime-stricken big cities across the country. Mayor London Breed has the job of appointing a new district attorney for San Francisco. AP has called the race. Results still rolling in, but it looks like that is the decision of San Francisco voters tonight.
Secretary Yellen, if you admit that you are wrong about inflation being temporary, how can you be confident that government spending is not the cause of inflation?
Heading to the car right now. But
did you ever warn the White House that increased government spending could have contributed to the inflation that we're seeing today?
That is Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen literally waving off questions from Fox Business correspondent Hillary Vaughn about the direct relationship between big government spending and soaring inflation. So let's debate that point and Yellen's testimony before the Senate Finance Committee Tuesday with Democratic strategist Kevin Walling and the Next Revolution host Steve Hilton. But before we get to that, Steve, because you are a California guy, I just want to get your reaction to the news out of San Francisco.
Well, it's incredibly good news for anyone who wants to clean up the mess that is San Francisco, because it's not just the fact that Chesa Boudin's been recalled. The margin looks to be way bigger than anyone predicted. Right now, we're coming up on about 50% of the votes reported. And the last time I looked, it was 61% to 38% for the recall. That is a huge margin. And I think it shows that actually these far-left district attorneys with their pro-crime agenda, the consequences of that are enough to push anyone, even the most liberal of cities, in the other direction. And it's a really big encouragement to the campaign to recall George Gascon, who in many ways is having an even bigger destructive effect because, of course, Los Angeles, where he's the DA, bigger city, more crime, they still have a month to get the signatures they need. And I think this is going to give them a real boost.
I mean, Kevin, this has been a rallying point for Republicans and conservatives who say these democratically run cities and progressive prosecutors are leading to these explosions of crime. Does this worry you going into the November elections?
It certainly worries me. You know, obviously, crime will be a key focus, and homelessness issues, of course, in those major cities are going to be a key focus, in addition to what we're seeing in terms of inflation that we're hopefully going to talk about, and the state of healthcare in this country. But certainly, crime is a serious concern for Americans. It's why I supported President Biden in the primary, because he has always been committed to increasing support for community policing and funding for police. And it's heartening to see, at least in Steve City, that both, you know, the leading Democrat and Republican, in terms of Rick Caruso and Karen Bass, both support increasing community policing, getting more cops on the street now from the central office. So I think that is going to be a key issue, obviously, heading into November.
I know Steve is chuckling over there. He probably has something to say about whether or not President Biden has been clear about, you know, supporting our police and wanting to beef them up. But let's get to the economic issue, which you guys graciously agreed to come talk about. I want to play this from White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre today.
What we're trying to say, what I'm trying to say to you, is that the economy is in a better place than it has been historically. And so we feel here at this administration, and other experts as well, is that we feel that we are in a good position to take on inflation.
Steve, it's better the economy than you think it is, and they're in good position to handle this inflation, which is good news because we all want that handled.
Yeah, more chuckling, I think, Shannon, but I'll try and contain my mirth. I mean, everything you look at, even like, let's take the best case that they can make, which is for the low unemployment. It's true that the actual rate is low, not as low as it was with President Trump, but still it's low. However, if you look behind that number and look at the proportion of Americans working, the size of the labor force, have we bounced back from the pandemic? No, we haven't. The size of the labor force, the proportion of adults working, is at its lowest right now for 45 years, apart from the immediate shutdown numbers. So how they can say that this is a good economy, and then if you look at the everyday experience of people with inflation and gas prices, the list that we keep focusing on because it seems to be getting worse and worse, there is no way they can look at this economy and say with a straight face that it is anything other than a disaster, and it's a disaster mainly created by them and their policies.
So let me put up the gas prices, how they've evolved over the last year. You could see this from a year ago to $3.53. That's the national average a gallon. We're now at $4.91. Kevin, an historic high. But that's not the only news, because over in the Washington Post, in an op-ed by Mark Thiessen today, he says, to think things are bad under Biden, get ready for the blackouts. He says this: add rolling blackouts to the rolling disasters President Biden has unleashed upon the country. The Post reported Thursday that the U.S. won't have enough power to get through the summer heat wave, leaving us at risk of widespread power outages. This is a national disgrace. Access to cheap, abundant energy is a hallmark of a free society. Kevin, more bad news for the administration.
Well, that's, you know, it is more bad news in terms of what Americans are feeling. And I think the administration is working to address all these issues. As you're seeing the president, he said that this is the #1 domestic issue that he's focusing on. But listen, if the president could wave a magic wand, if any president could wave a magic wand and bring down the cost of gasoline, they would do that, Republican or Democrat. But listen, gas prices are set by the global market. We are producing more oil and gas in this country. We're a net exporter, and we have been since last October. So you have global issues that are affecting the cost of gasoline. We need, as Democrats, to get that message out because it is out of the president's control when it comes to that. Now, we're working to make fuel more efficient with ethanol regulations. We are opening the strategic reserves to hopefully bring down those costs. We're working to pass anti-price gouging legislation at the pump while the Republicans stand universally against us. So, we're 150 days or so out from the midterm elections. I want to be on the team that's actually working on this crisis, addressing this crisis as the president is doing, and not on the one that just is standing idly by as the House burns to the ground, as we're seeing with Republicans in Congress.
10 seconds to close us out, Steve.
We don't need a magic wand. We just need to stop the war on American energy that they unleashed. Release the restrictions on American energy producers, and that will create long-term investment. And you'll see the price come down almost overnight as people believe in the future of American energy.
We're producing more oil than at any time in recent memory, Steve.
Well, that's not what the...
It's not a production problem.
It's It is. It's much less than would be the case if we hadn't seen the war on energy unleashed on day one of this administration.
We are a net exporter right now, and we have been for 6 months.
We got to leave it there. But
Thanks,
gentlemen, nobody's feeling that at the pump. They wanted to head south, so let's hope this administration finds a way to do that. Kevin and Steve, thank you both very much.
Thank you, Shannon.
Good to see you.
You too. Coming up, Top Gun Maverick. It's a big hit with theater goers, but now the studio behind the blockbuster is facing a lawsuit over claims that its copyright to the story expired. Sounds like a case for night court. It is next, and you are the jury.